What's up, y'all? It's 10 at 3 time at Tennessee. How are you? I hope you're doing well. Hope everything in your life is going well on this sunny but windy day here in Knoxville, Tennessee. Friday, January the 16th, 2026. Joined by, got Lord of the Streams, Tom Barclay, back doing the ones and twos after a couple of days of a silent protest that he had going on.
It would help if I turned my mic on. Sorry for the Mizzou hat, by the way. It's all I could find in the house today. I would normally wear my ball.
It's where you went to school, man.
It is, but I got to rep local.
I mean, I don't know, man. People appreciate honesty. You got
I
a good
guess.
journalism school. You went there. Ain't no crime in that.
Fair.
You know what I mean?
I am repping the alma mater, but I still think I should be wearing a Vols hat for a Friday.
I mean, hey, what's that old that old saying around here that's been going on forever? On Fridays we wear orange. Is that the?
Yeah, absolutely, and especially during football season.
But see, there's no
I
except
don't
for the
make any
press
mistake
box.
for
You know,
that.
you never.
I would never.
You know, in the press box, you will be smoked unless they're like, oh, did you get a job for Tennessee Sports Information? Oh, then why are you wearing orange today? It's
if you wear orange on air, not wear orange on air, especially if you wear red on air during a football Friday. We'll be hearing about it.
You know, it's a fascinating conversation, and we got a ton to talk about today with the portal, and we'll get to all that, of course. But because that closes at 11:59, at least to enter it, you can still go somewhere else when you've been posted. But you got till midnight to kind of get your paperwork in, and then we'll see by tomorrow midday. Usually, that's when the last things have been processed that were from the night before. So, pretty close to knowing exactly who's in and out. We got a lot to talk about there, but what Tom just said got me thinking about something that's super interesting that I've thought about a lot the past few years. And that is the difference. I am sort of a sports journalism and journalism in general, like a journalism nerd, right? Like those of us who do this for a living, you know, some of us are fortunate to make decent livings, but none of us get into it for the money. That's not what really, I mean, if you're looking for cash, there's other ways to go secure a better chance of getting mo cash, if you know what I mean. But
very true, very true.
But so we're nerds about this stuff. Like we love this life. We're weird about it.
We're doing it for the love of the game. Okay.
Yes, I mean we because of we love it. It gives us a rush in a lot of ways. It is, but it's also I mean, there's no way to not sound pompous when you say this. So I'll say it as delicately as possible. It does serve as an important role in a free society is the freedom of the press to challenge, to demand answers, to get explanations, to uncover things in the dark, bring them to light. Free societies don't really function without it. So again, like it's not like, oh, we need to get on first at airplanes. I mean, it's not. Nobody's saying that. I mean, maybe some idiots somewhere are, but I'm not. Yeah. But what we do because, you know, we love it and there's rules that we adhere to. But sometimes there's different rules in different countries that also have free presses. And what I'm talking about in particular, everyone knows I'm a big, huge soccer fan, right? Like I think I cover all the sports here and I love them. I love American sports. I think baseball is the greatest game in the world. I also love soccer. It's probably 1B, probably favorite game on the planet. And so I don't cover, but I watch how a lot of the people overseas cover soccer because I absorb the media, right? And over there, they have many more people who are openly and admittedly fans of the team they cover. Because it's rules in America, like it's, hey, you do not wear the color in the press box. You do not cheer in the press box. If you cheer in the press box, you will be dismissed. These are rules, right? Like and you know, because they're professional workplaces where, hey, we got to get stuff done. There's, you know, these things don't produce themselves, right? These stories, the written content, none of these things produce themselves, right? Like you have to produce them, and you need a kind of a nice calm and working environment, such as it can be in a really loud place, to get stuff done. But like over there, and I'm even talking like professional things, like, you know, the athletics, stuff like that, like the professional outlets in the Premier League. They basically have guys covering every team, and most of them are fans of that team and openly are fans of that team. Now, they don't wear stuff into the press box. They don't cheer in the press box, but they are just openly fans of the team they cover. And we're taught here that if you are in your heart a fan of something, it will impact the way you cover it. Like there will be things that are embarrassing for that program that you will not write. There are things that don't have to be written, but if you covered somebody else, you'd write them or you'd say them, but you don't if it's the team you cover. And over there, they don't really do that, which is interesting because they will say that people who are fans of a team have more interest in that team being successful. So if things like tactically or recruiting wise or whatever are not up to snuff, they feel like fans will sometimes snuff that out more and be more like, force answers about this stuff. I don't necessarily agree with that. I do understand it, but it's just interesting because they have free press over there too, just like we do over here, right? In fact, they have stricter rules on what you can and can't say. It's free, but you can't lie. You can't factually say things that are untrue, or else you get in serious trouble for that over here. Not like here where it's like, it's just my opinion, man, and you get away with it. You can't do that over there, really. But to me, it's just fascinating because, and again, in the SEC and college sports, the Big Ten, there are absolutely people who are fans of a team who cover a team, and they admit that they are. But they still, they won't wear the colors, they won't make noise in the press box. But there are times, and I know this for a fact, where there will be information that needs to be out there, and they will not write it. They will not write it. They will not say it on air. They will not go there. They just won't do it. And my argument has always been you're serving the program to do that. You're not serving the public when you do that. You're not serving. I'm not trying to lecture. I'm giving my opinion on this. It's your job is to tell people what's going on and then let them say, well, here's what's happening. Here's all this information. Here, in some people, in my case, it's like, here's what I think about this information. Now, you think whatever you want to think about it, but I want you to have the information. And I'm not saying every little thing that ever happens has to come out immediately and put it on blast everywhere. No, it's not. We're humans. We're reasonable. But it's the job to give people the information and arm them with the information and let them do what they want with it. But to me, it's a fascinating argument. And it's not one that I can sit here and say I know I'm right about, because there's lots of places in the world where they do it differently. And it's still like the people who cover things from a national level over there are more neutral with things, but they just don't hide that they have a clear bias. Mm-hmm. And I go back and forth on that because there's parts of me, and it's such an interesting philosophical discussion. Is it better if you are seriously one of those fans that people know you are, so they can take that into account when they're getting the information? Does that come equipped with the package of arming people with information? And so there's not just one way to do this. And I think in new media, as things blend, we're seeing this, right? And people would say, well, why do fans care about this? I think they ought to care, maybe. I'm not going to tell them they need to, but I mean, I'm a fan of the Chicago Cubs, right? I'm a fan of Arsenal. I want to know what the heck's going on there all the time. And if they're doing something that ain't right, I want to know about it. If it's a little thing, okay. But if it's a big thing, I want to know about it. I want to know, okay, is this on the up and up? This shirt that I'm wearing, what does it represent? I want to know what it represents. And I don't think everybody's got to be a choir boy, but I want to know what you go to a restaurant, you want to know what's in the food, right? You want to know that it's made the way it should be, and that it's cleanish, depending on where you go. It's fine. Little dives here and there that maybe they aren't passing health codes, but it's still delicious food and you just deal with it. But for me, it's such a fascinating discussion on the thing because there's not just one way to do this that's okay, in my opinion. And when I started in this business 25 years ago, I was indoctrinated with that there's a way to do this and there's a way not to do it. And if you're not doing it the way that we were taught to do it, you're wrong. But you evolve over time and you see, you know what? This is a big enough pie where there's enough room for a lot of people to eat. And as long as people know what it is they're eating, I'm okay with that now, because I think there are places you can go where, because of they are fans of somebody, they are at times actively, helping somebody, there will be information that comes their way and it goes there first. And that's something you live with, because and it goes in all sports now, everywhere around the country. It's an access thing. Like, we know this. We know this. I feel like I'm talking about some sort of Illuminati secret here. No, we all know this everywhere around the country.
Yeah.
Follow the scoops. That's the access. And so I spent early parts of my career just raging against that machine at different places I was, and just saying, you know what? I'm not going to play ball to get this. I'm going to do it a different way. I'm just going to hound you all the time. And I'm going to still get the information, and I'm not going to have to feel like I've done anything I don't like to do it. But that kind of wears on you over time. It's just not like a comfortable. I love journalism, but I'm fine with that. I got that pitch. I've still got that club in the bag. But you get a little older, and I'm like, you know what? I can find out what's going on, and I can find it out a second or two or a minute or two later. But I'm comfortable with how I got it, and I'm comfortable in the fact that I'm giving you my honest opinion on what it is. And so that's where I evolve over things over time, is I say, you know what? You can go some places for something and some places for something else. And that's like, I'm always going to tell you what Tennessee thinks to the best that I can get it, both on the record, off the record, on background. I'll tell you what Tennessee thinks about something, because that's fair. But if Tennessee wants you to think something and I don't think it's the truth, I will say that, if I have enough evidence to say, hey, let's at least pause on this. What does this really mean? And people know they can go different places for different things. And that's not a bad thing. Like, everybody loves certain foods. They're probably not going to eat them every day. You change it up a little bit. You like this, you got in the mood for this, you go there. You're in the mood for that, you go there. And I think that's kind of where this thing fits in long term, I think. I think it's always going to have the people who are going to do whatever it takes, get everything first, right? Whatever way they want to do it. And then you got people who are like, you know what? I'm just going to tell you what I really think about it. And so if you're a fan and you want this, and this is what you want, this is how you want to consume information, go there. And if you're a fan who wants a little more nuance, go there. If you're a fan who wants to know, you know what, John Doe or Jane Doe over here, he or she, they really get on the ball. Sometimes they're a little too unfair. But if they're saying something positive, by gosh, I know it's positive, because they don't put up with nonsense. They don't suffer fools. They're going to tell you straight up what they think. And that's where it's maybe a little more kumbaya-ish these days of the motto. And I think if you go back to the very, very beginning, we talked about when we were starting this show, kind of the tempo, the flow, the rules, the house rules. I was still going to post them online at some point, because I did take time, like a couple weeks, to really kind of put those thoughts out there of what I wanted it to be. And it's like, it's very much an inclusive thing. Like, I want to have conversations with people who are diehard, absolutely, Tennessee, orange-colored, glasses. This is what I think, yada, yada. And I also want to expose people to conversations from people who are opposite of that, people who are neutral, people who are fans of the opponent Tennessee's about to play. I want, as long as you're, respectful, I want you to have a seat at the table. And I didn't used to think that way. But it's like, the older you get, you're like, who am I to dictate what this is and how this is? I mean, I know what I will do and won't do. but unless it's seriously over a line, other people can do things the way they want, and that's okay. That's okay, because what that does is it puts another set of eyes to give you a full picture of what's going on within a program. And these are the things, this is one of the many reasons I don't sleep at night, Tom, because I sit up philosophically and think about these things. Sitting there staring up at the ceiling fan at night, being like, you know what? I'm going to have a deep ethical conversation with myself about what this is and what it means. Because when you're young and you get into this business immediately, man, you're like you've just been sent off the assembly line. You're full of all these, you're armed with all this information about how things are, and this is journalism and this isn't, and I'm going to do it this way and I'm going to do it that way. And if you're not doing it this way, you don't belong. I'm in here to bust skulls. And then you get a little older, I think most of us, and you go, at least in this era, with as much as things have evolved, you go, no, it's okay to have other people who do things differently. It's fine. And I can even be, I personally have respect for the people. I wouldn't do the job the way they do it, but they wouldn't do it the way I do it. And what I love about this market in particular is that you get a little bit of everything, and that's cool. I mean, I want you to come here first. Duh. You should. You should, right? I mean, come on, look at that logo behind me. You know what that 10 represents. We're coming straight down the middle at you. We're going to tell you stuff. But there's room for everybody at the table. There's room for everybody. There's room for people who will say something and you're like, that's nonsense. But okay, maybe you're right occasionally. And we're all wrong occasionally as well. And it's just so funny that, like, it took me really focusing on the way things were done in other places around the world to kind of translate that and bring that back here and say, you know what? I've evolved my thinking on this. Live and let live. Live and let live. We are going to be honest about a lot of things today, though, because the portal is closing, at least to enter it. We're going to talk about that, where things stand with Tennessee. Potential new quarterback in the mix. Hey-o, there's a lot going on there. Not like a sure thing, but and may not even happen. But at least it's a name. There's at least a name that's been out there. And we also, if we have time later, we get to a couple of interviews with Tennessee basketball assistant coach Greg Polinsky and with Tennessee baseball outfielder Reese Chapman, who was recently named one of the most, or I think D1 baseball, I think named him the number 4 overall senior ranked in the country going into this season. So guy's got a past here, some good, some bad, but always been an unbelievably good kid, a guy who you're going to like hearing from. We'll bring you that information later, too. Before that, though, we got to step away for just a second and get to a little bit of secret time with some ads, and we will be right back here in just a couple minutes on 10 and 3.
All right.
Secret time.
Secret time.
It's funny because file this under things that might be interesting to me and nobody else. But I like having information on, like, the teams that I have a personal, vested, emotional interest in. And I think there's at least a market out there for people who feel the same way about Tennessee, and they want to know, you know, what I don't just want to know the information. I want to know how you're getting it. I want to know what it means. Like, and if I feel like I know you a little bit, then I can know what you're about and how you're getting it. That's where I think this thing is neat. I think it gives people information just so much more than they used to have. And if you deliver it the right way, I think it's a good thing.
I think, to your point, everyone's going to have their own, distinct style, biases, whatever, what have you, about what they're covering. It's impossible for us to say that we're unbiased.
No one in the world,
literally in the market that we're covering the Vols out of, it would be impossible.
No one in this world is truly objective about anything.
Exactly.
That doesn't exist. That's a fallacy.
And that is a style thinking that I think needs to be put out there more. I think people, it's good to be objective. It's good to be, honest.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean you're necessarily unbiased in what you're reporting, right? You're going to have your own inherent biases about what you're doing there.
Yes, and I think that's
30 seconds, by the way.
I think that's that's an important distinction because there's just no way that any human being is truly 100% objective and judgment-free about anything in the world ever at any time. But I think if you're at least being honest about things, then, because I mean, I've always said that it's, I'll explain this later. Secret Time 2, we'll get to that.
Right, we're wrapping up, and we're back.
Welcome back to 10 at 3. Here, Wes Rucker coming to you from WBIR World Headquarters, as we've said I've decided that I'm going to call it WBIR World Headquarters. That's our building.
What about, Universal Headquarters at this point? If we're going to, why stop there?
Because I don't know exactly what's going on all the other planets. There's a lot of things out there that we haven't seen yet. We don't know.
True, but there may be a WBIR out there still that we don't know about. We got to watch out.
But I'm telling you, if there's life out there beyond this, like in terms of this existence, then they probably know about us and we don't know about them, and I bet they're more advanced than us. That's just my theory.
Okay.
So I don't want to say, I'll say this world, planet Earth headquarters is what I'll say is what we are. Because there might be another WBR somewhere. There's a lot of countries in the world, but we're better than them. We'll fight them. That's fine. We'll go out in the parking lot, Anchorman style. We'll take care of you. There's a lot going on today, though, with the portal. As things stand now, Tennessee 27 out and 11 in. And one of the reasons why, by the way, I don't know if you noticed this, got an Oxford on today. I think in my contract it says a maximum of 10 Oxford shirt appearances per year. So getting at least one of them out of the way early on, that's nice. Because we recorded some stuff early with the portal that are going to be on the news later tonight as a heads up. And the Cliff's notes on that is don't freak out at that number. That number, as we've mentioned many times, is not quite what you think it is. Handful of walk-ons in there, a few guys who weren't really on the active roster even this season for different reasons. And then a couple of those guys, a few of them at least, were guys at Tennessee. You ain't going to kick them out, but you encourage them to go elsewhere if they want to get some minutes, some snaps and some reps and play. And Tennessee, as of now, has brought in, I think, 11. I expect that number to go up. We'll see. But we'll only do Cliff Notes because we talked about it more in depth yesterday, but in case you missed the program yesterday, go back and listen to it. But the Cliff Notes of it were basically when you sign a full boat in terms of guys coming in on scholarship, and then you also don't have a ton of seniors on a team, and you want to bring in guys through the portal, you only have X amount of scholarships. If Tennessee's back to the full boat, which I think it finally is, at 85, then you have to manage that number. You got to have, it's X in, X out. And so numbers got to match. And so a lot of times these numbers are large because they need to be large. And that's just how it goes. And if you look around the country too, there's other places that have numbers larger than this. So to me, it looks like a lot of people, and it is, but it's not. There was only maybe, I would say, a half dozen of those guys in Tennessee's like, I really would have liked to have had him back. But you're not, every football team every season will lose players to the portal it doesn't want to lose. The issue for Tennessee, in my opinion, is a couple of positions where they got to do something. And the most obvious one is quarterback. They just have to do something. If you go into a season with 2 scholarship quarterbacks, 1 freshman, 1 redshirt freshman, I don't care if they're 10 stars, which is the maximum amount of stars that 2 players together can be in the system that has operated for the past 25, 30 years. They are freshmen. And it's also just 2. So you need at least 1 more scholarship quarterback, at least. And you probably need it to be an older guy. And so Tennessee will need to work on that because there's not a lot out there. But we said before, look for maybe some guys to step into the portal late because Tennessee and some other schools are still definitely looking for a quarterback, and everybody knows they got money. So these players have representatives who are going to see that. And if they've not re-signed terms with the school they're at for next season, then if their agent is worth anything, that agent's going to say, go into the portal, even if you stay where you are, because you're going to get more money. Because there's some schools out here that are, if not apex predators, they're in that conversation, and they're darn near apex predators financially too. So that raises the floor for what you can possibly make. And even if you have no intention of really going there, just the threat of it, that's business. You'll get more money. And hey, a lot of these guys, they can make more money as seniors in college than they could ever make at the professional level, because they're not that kind of a prospect. A lot of guys wash out at that level. If you don't get drafted high, you're not going to get a really good first contract. You make more money to stay in school. And people who will be smart, in some cases, will do that if that's what they want to do. One name that did pop up who does, we don't have an official connection, at least I've not, as of the time we're recording this, 3:27 p.m. Eastern on Friday, January 16th. Timestamp, #timestamp, because you have to say that in this era. But Parker Navarro is a quarterback from Ohio who spent the past 4 years at Ohio University. The 2 years before that, he spent at UCF, where he was recruited by, drumroll, Josh Heupel. So there is a connection there. And there's a couple of large caveats there. One, he's still filing with the NCAA to get that extra year. We don't know if he's going to get that, or at least I don't know. Maybe he knows. I don't. Maybe nobody knows yet. I don't, for sure. But if he gets that extra year, then would Tennessee be interested, or does Tennessee have somebody else in mind? I don't know. But we're mining the field for names that make any kind of sense, because that's what you do in this situation. You think, what are these coaches thinking? And the first thing they're thinking is, who's out there? The second thing they're asking is, who's not out there, but maybe could be, and I got a connection there. And this falls in that category. So, and this is how a lot of coaching hot boards are made too, by the way. We all keep running files of coaching hot boards all the time based on what a school will need at a certain time, who's out there, who has connections to the AD, who plays the kind of style that we know this athletic director is going to go looking for, offense or defense, fast-paced, slow-paced, big, small, what's he want, what's she want. This is how we get these things. And oftentimes we're fairly accurate because it's not, and we're not that smart. It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it's not that difficult to, once you learn how to do it, to take a step back and say, well, who would make sense here? If they had the money, who could they get? Who'd be at the top of the board? Then who's this? Then who's that? So that's a big caveat that we don't know of a connection there. It's a big caveat that he doesn't have the final year of eligibility guaranteed yet. And it is obviously a caveat that past couple years he's had almost as many picks as touchdowns, which is not superb, not ideal. I would say that Josh Heupel quarterbacks tend to take better care of the ball because of the way they run their system and the way he demands that they do this. So if things were to happen there, I could see him being a guy who the numbers would go down if he was out there, but the pick numbers anyways. But he's a good athlete, rush for a lot of yards, can run around, make some plays, and that can be helpful in certain situations. So that's one name to look for. But at the end of the day, the important thing here is that they got to get a quarterback, because the worst thing you can do as a football coach, I'll say this 2 days in a row, and it'll probably not be the last time you hear me say it. The two worst things you can do as a coach, other than the obvious, which is lose games. Duh. But the two things that you really can't do as a coach, if you care about your future, do not make the same mistake over and over and over, because every time you do it, it's harder to explain away. That's number one. Number two, do not make a decision that on the front end, John Doe or Jane Doe on their couch can say, wait a minute, that's not good. This could be very bad, and here's exactly why this could be bad. And then that happens. Not like people who analyze this for a living. Not like, so-called professionals in our media world. I think we're professionals, but a lot of people call us so-called professionals. So that's fine. We'll use your terminology. So-called professionals. So-called experts. Air quotes. that's one thing. But if you make a decision, like if you go into a season with 2 scholarship quarterbacks and they're both freshmen, in an era where almost all of your peers are going old at the position and have more than 2 scholarship quarterbacks on the roster, duh. And if you make that decision and then things don't go well, everyone, I mean everyone, will be able to sit there in unison and say, what in the world were you thinking? And that becomes difficult to explain because that becomes a weight. How much money are you getting paid now? And how much am I making? How much are you making? How long have I done this? How long have you done this? And you didn't understand this? Because I understand it. That's a problem. Because hindsight is always 20/20. And you'll always have people who go back after the fact and say, oh, well, obviously this was this or this was that. No, I don't put a ton of that's important information, but I also don't always trust it. What you can trust is when it's questioned immediately at the time and then it goes exactly the way you think it's going to go. And to that, I will go back to the end of the Music City Bowl.
We're going to keep bringing it up.
It's the last game they played.
I know.
And if you go back, I think at some point I took a screenshot of it. I made like 8 or 9 tweets at the very beginning of that drive, just going after every play going, just let them score. What are you doing? Just let them score. What are you doing? Just let them score. And then I was like, here's what's going to happen. Illinois is going to get a 1st and goal here. They're going to work it down this, and they're going to get the clock down to 0, and they're going to kick an extra point to walk you off. And I'm sitting there the whole time going, from the very beginning, like as soon as Tennessee scored on that kick return, I'm sitting there saying, hey, guys, careful here. Careful here. Let them score. Telling you, you can't stop them. Your defense does not have the personnel right now. It wasn't a good defense to begin with. A lot of your best players aren't out there now. Let them score. They're going to grind you. They're going to grind you into dust here, and they're going to walk you off on a PAT. Don't do it. And then you follow that with an offseason where people go, why did you think going 2 scholarship quarterbacks, both of them freshmen, how did you think that was going to work out? And that is how narratives are built. You could sit there and with those 2 problems that we just discussed, one of them an actual one that we know, one of them a theory, which could be proven true or false. We don't know yet. But let's just say for the sake of argument that something like that does happen. So you got those 2 things. Those could be 2 of the 1,000 decisions that you make during the course of a year that are important decisions to make. And you might get darn near all of those right. But these 2 were obvious from the beginning that they could be a problem, and they were. And they torpedoed things, either a game or a season or whatever. So none of the other great things you've done at that point seem as significant. And that's how coaches get in trouble. Now, again, if it's always something different, but the results aren't good, then it gets into a matter of how much do people like the coach? Can they see that he learns? Do recruits still like going there so you can see that eventually they're going to have enough talent to get this thing sorted? Can you see that, like, okay, you plugged this hole and then another one popped up, but now you'll plug. So eventually, you'll plug the dam eventually. You'll feel like it's a possibility, right? That's one thing that's out there. And, what's the mood of the fan base? What's the mood of the donors? So you still get in trouble there anyway, but sometimes you have more slack. But when you do a couple of certain things, you just lose slack and that's where you got to be careful. Because when it becomes something that John Doe or Jane Doe, either sending us tweets here at 10 and 3 or calling radio stations around town or going on social media and saying things, they can see it too. And when they are correct, or it looks like they're really correct and they're mostly correct, that's where it gets awkward to try to explain things. That's where you have a hard time. That's where you get into the office space. What would you say you do here? And if you're doing 98 to 99% of the things exactly the way or an acceptable level they need to be done, that still might not be good enough because the big things, a couple of big obvious things you didn't see, or you couldn't find a way to get over them. And then you got to explain the situation. Then you have to come out publicly and you got to bring some of that dirty laundry out. And you got to say, all right, here's what's happened. We had this guy, done deal. Then he went elsewhere at the last minute and there were no other guys available. That's where you have to and I don't know that Josh Heupel's ever comfortable doing that because he just does not he doesn't like talking to us on the record at all. He's pleasant, but never says much. But he really doesn't like throwing other people under the bus. He'll only really question officials when he's over the top irate publicly. He's got class in that way. But to be preservationist, you have to lose a little bit of class in that moment because you have to explain what happened. And the easy way to avoid all of that, go get a quarterback. And if you're going to overpay, so what? At this point, I don't know that a Tennessee fan would really care if you said, you know what, I got to pay this dude 3 or 4 times what he's worth to just be a warm body, just in case. Well, guys, this is a case. This is one of those just in case cases. You got to go do something. You got to do something. You got to have something up your sleeve. And I think they know that. I don't obviously can't say they know that. I think they know that. But they got to find a way to do something here because I just think if you go into a season with 2 quarterbacks on scholarship and they're both freshmen, unless you have a really good season or unless you have a bad season but you score 45 points a game, people are going to go exactly back to this. Even if it's not those quarterbacks' fault, even if it's the receivers can't run the correct routes, even if it's the line can't block for anything, even if it's the running backs are hurt and dinged up and can't create splash plays, can't break tackles, any of that could be true. And it won't matter. It won't matter. Because serious ball knowers can go out there and say it's not on them. The average person's not going to buy that. We've seen this time and time again. They're not going to buy it. And that's, ladies and gentlemen, is how coaches get in trouble. So don't do that. Take this advice here. Look at this guy. I never make any mistakes. I've never been wrong about anything ever. Don't go look at hot takes or cold takes exposed on social media over the years. Don't search cold takes exposed Wes Rucker or hot takes exposed Wes Rucker. Don't go do that.
We'll also forget some of those
the predictions
episodes in late November and December where there was a bit of a cold streak. But,
yeah,
you know,
that where instead of being snake eyes, I was like snake cheeks. That was snake cheeks, snake booty cheeks. It was bad for 4 or 5 weeks there, but I got it back a little bit.
But always right otherwise. Yeah.
Other than that. But we're going to get back to a little bit of secret time here, and then we're going to be back in just a couple minutes, and we're going to wrap up with talking a little Tennessee-Kentucky basketball, big one on Saturday at Food City Center, and we will get to that just after this break.
All right.
I think I really should have written this down, but I teased something at the end of the last secret time. I'm trying to remember what it was. We were talking about journalism and...
Well, we were, and obviously we were talking, we do have those interviews.
Yeah, I know.
If we can get to those.
I think we will probably get to... I think we're going to have to take old Reese back to next week.
Mm-hmm.
But it's good stuff, though, and Reese Chapman's a good story, and I want to give him his flowers and give him his own time. But the Polinsky stuff, I say let's get to – you know what? We'll play both Polinskys.
Okay.
Because I think it's snap decision at the time. I think his discussion of the things that went wrong in the A&M game, but how they found a way to win it anyway, and then him talking about Kentucky.
1 minute, by the way.
I think that, to be honest, he knows more ball than I do, so we'll let him talk about it, and then we'll talk afterward. But we'll come back from break. We'll do it real quick. Here's some Greg Polinsky stuff, and then because everybody loves old Greg anyway. And we'll get some quotes from him, and then we'll play those things, and then wrap it up for a few minutes, and then call it a weekend.
Sure.
Because I think he would explain. He probably knows more about the Kentucky Wildcats than this guy right here. He's probably watched more film than this guy right here, right?
Yeah.
And I would say he knows his players a bit more than this guy right here. Mm-hmm. So we'll let him talk about it, and then we'll talk about it, and we'll be fair, and we'll do all those things.
Sure.
And we will mention. I'll mention one thing real quick.
15 away, by the way.
I'll mention one thing, one little baseball note real quick, and then we'll get into the hoops.
Sure. All right, and 3.
Welcome back to 10 at 3 here on a Friday, January 16th, 2026 here in Knoxville, Tennessee. Hope all of you are doing well out there. Welcome on back. We're going to talk hoops before we get out of here today. I did want to give a quick shout out to, or a quick salute to Hunter Ensley, Tennessee baseball legend, whose performance in Omaha a couple years ago put him down in lore as one of the just biggest big game moment kind of heroes in Tennessee athletics history. He has retired from baseball after one season with the Kansas City Royals organization. Everyone loves Hunter Ensley. I never really thought that he might make it to that level. I didn't know if he'd be a major league player. I thought that would always be a long haul, as it is for anybody. A lot of even first-round picks don't make it. But he had some health things and some injuries, and, but, man, what a player, what a gamer, what a guy. I'd love to get him in here at some point. He's always a good interview. We'll see if we can get Hunter to come step in the hot box with us here at some point. And we'll get to that Reese Chapman interview early next week when we got some good stuff there from him last night, talking about the season and his why he came back to Tennessee instead of going pro, some other things. We'll get to all that. But first, we're going to get to our I don't know if I'm going to call him friend of the pod, but he's kind of a friend of everybody. So I'll go ahead and call him a friend of the pod, a friend of the show. Greg Polinsky, Tennessee assistant coach, a guy who spent 20 years more or less as an NBA executive, scout, someone in NBA personnel departments. And then he and Rick Barnes have always known each other, though. And he's like, hey, I want to add you to my staff one day. And then a couple years ago, got the opportunity. He came to Tennessee and has enjoyed every bit of it. Here is Greg Polinsky talking about first. We'll have him talking about the A&M game and some lessons learned from that, and then we'll come back from that, and he's talking about Kentucky after that. But here's Tennessee assistant coach Greg Polinsky from this morning.
I feel like the way you guys came back and coming in the other night can be kind of a big point for this team to build off of.
Well, yeah, I think any time that you find a way to win those type of games, obviously it wasn't the most artistic game, although some found it entertaining. Pretty nerve-wracking, but yeah, I mean, stylistically, the way they play, Bucky's done an awesome job. Just to be able to kind of grind through that, kind of get a rhythm a little bit more in the second half, taking care of the basketball. But exactly to your question or pertaining to it, yeah, that was good for us.
How happy are you to be done having to face that style of basketball?
Well, it's not, something that, you love dealing with, but I think what I've learned over time is, like, that team will probably play us a little different, do some different things, probably manage the backboard better when we play them. Hopefully us, as when Buzz Williams was there, not because they ran that funky matchup zone initially, it was really hard. I'm not sure we ever figured it out completely, but we got better with it. So the various styles of playing the league, especially new coaches coming in, you start to at least gain some knowledge and figure out a little more of how you want to approach it. And no excuse, because, same for them, but having one day to prepare for it, and we spent the whole day working on press offense, and I know Coach was disappointed because we didn't execute as well as we needed to early, but it was a challenging game.
I guess it could be a point of reference later on in the season, though, especially as y'all get into March, about how to handle the press. I guess that prepares you well for March.
Yeah, I think our league prepares us well, that's for sure. And we'll see it again, like Georgia, just watching like you guys do. I'm sure all the different teams, how they play, what they're doing. But, Georgia's going to press, do some things. Just speaking of one team, when we do our non-conference schedule, we always try to do it with some thought as to how they play stylistically, when our team might be ready for that. Even though it may seem like, hey, you guys have won by a good margin against some teams, there is kind of a method to the madness when Luke Shepker and I look at teams. Obviously, conference is dictated, right? So, but that's a good point. You may see it again, and it won't seem like a shock to the system.
That was Tennessee assistant basketball coach Greg Polinsky talking about sort of why things went the way they did in that A&M game when Tennessee it made life hard for itself, but then found a way to come back and win. Credit them for that. There are no bad wins in this league, period. End of sentence. But obviously there's another huge one coming up on Saturday, noon Eastern. The Kentucky Wildcats are coming on down the mountain, up and down the mountain, Jellicoe, coming on down to East Tennessee for the Southern Appalachian Super Bowl of basketball. It's played twice every year. And here's Greg Polinsky talking about tomorrow's matchup with Kentucky.
Y'all's recovery and preparation change after playing a 2 overtime game like that?
No, G would be the best guy to ask for that. I don't know what he did with his training, but our preparation yesterday, we had a really good practice. Guys went really hard. There were things we have to improve upon, so I wouldn't call it a light practice. I think today we'll probably, get after it. But the nice thing is, without school being in, we're able to run these practices earlier in the morning, so the recovery time, et cetera. And again, I leave that to Garrett and Chad, and then, how Coach is feeling.
What's Kentucky year 2 under Mark Pope look like compared to year 1?
They're different. Last year, I think it was an extraordinary thing what he did with was it an entirely new group? To get to the Sweet 16 with a new team. I think we're saying that, and I'll get back to it, but I'm thinking about our league right now. And it seems like teams are, I watched Texas and Vandy. Vandy's obviously terrific, playing great. But teams that were 0-2, they win at Alabama, they beat Vandy. Then Ole Miss, who seemed like they were struggling, finds a way to win it, beat Missouri, then go on the road and win at the buzzer. So I think what's happening is, with all of the new talent coming in, as a European coach reminded me the other day, he said, now you know what we go through every year. A whole new team with different personality types. And I think for Coach Pope and their staff, what you think when you are doing your evaluation and systematically looking at your roster construction versus the reality of it when it arrives can be very different. Bill Self, who's one of the great coaches of all time, I'm sure Bill expected more out of his team last year, but you just don't know what certain guys are going to do. Pairing them with new guys, and I think we're dealing with some of that, but I think they better defensively, more physical as a group. They're not as explosive offensively, but as soon as I say that, they might ring us up for 90. So I think that Mark has actually done a really good job with the way things have turned out with his team. But we all know where you are. There's levels of expectations, and that is something that sometimes is very challenging to deal with.
And that was the final clip we got today of Tennessee assistant coach Greg Polinsky talking about Saturday's noon Eastern matchup with the Kentucky Wildcats, Southern Appalachia Basketball Super Bowl at Food City Center. It's always a big game. It's always a heated game, always some emotion because throughout history, again, Kentucky fans, Kentucky's gotten let's not get this twisted. Kentucky's gotten the better end of this matchup historically. We all know this. But nobody has beaten Kentucky more than Tennessee in history. And Tennessee and Kentucky have always kind of gone at each other's necks. And it's two fan bases who really don't like each other and two groups of players who sometimes kind of like each other, sometimes really don't. Just kind of depends on year to year. As Polinsky said, right, every year is a new year. And it's interesting to hear him say good things about, the situation up there at UK with Mark Pope. And everybody likes Mark Pope. They just do. And he's just always been kind of universally regarded as a good guy in the business. And, Rick Barnes has a lot of respect for him. Polinsky obviously has a lot of respect for him. Everybody in that program does. But not a lot of people up in Big Blue Nation are thrilled with the situation right now. That team is 11-6 overall. It's 2-2 in league play. It really should be 1-3 if we're being honest. It came back, and credit the Cats for doing this. We're down 18 points down there in Baton Rouge and battled back and won. Hit a really impressive shot there at the buzzer to win it. Heck of a game, heck of a rally for them. But to even be in that position against that LSU team, that's tough. And not that this is always the most fair way to go about it, but according to a lot of reports, Kentucky is the highest paid team in college basketball, which you would expect, right? And they do their revenue sharing differently. Most of the SEC schools are roughly in line with each other with divvying up the pie in terms of this much to football, this much to Kentucky. They've shaded a little bit more of it toward basketball, which is obviously very different. But that's, if anyone's going to do it, Kentucky in the league, Kentucky would do it. And so, but when you do that, and then you have all the NIL money they've got in other avenues, and there are expectations there. And they're now without their point guard for the rest of the season, who's not a great shooter, but a good scorer, good distributor, makes that offense go in a lot of ways. That hurts them. But they've been inconsistent now. But what they can do is sometimes they can score in bunches. They play fast enough that if you're up 15 or down 15, that's not necessarily going to stay that way. Whereas Tennessee's a team that it's come back before, but the trade-off of Tennessee not always being explosive offensively is that if Tennessee gets a multi-possession lead kind of in the second half, they can really kind of physically wear on you and they can make it hard on you. So that's kind of the trade-off that you have in styles. But for what it's worth, Tennessee is, I believe, a 6.5-point favorite. Tennessee and the matchup predictors and things, these are analytics and they're good tools to look at. They don't always – they have a hard time sometimes, I think, with the who's available, who's not, what kind of – is someone on a hot streak, is someone not. I don't know how they can measure some of those things that are tangible but hard to measure metrically, if that makes sense. Because you have intangibles, which you can't measure. And then you have hard tangibles, which you can measure and make predictions based off of. But then you have external factors. How does this style match up with this style? How has this player done in the past 10 games? Have you weighted it to that, or the past 5 games? Or, every time this guy plays against this other guy, he goes off on this guy. Or every time this guy plays this guy defends him well. Or there's a lot of things that make games go the way they do without accounting for the fact that even in this older era, these are 18 to 22, 23-year-old guys. Not historically the most consistent group of humans are males that age. And I say that as someone who was a male that age. So, yes, I'm not going to be a hypocrite about it. I'm an idiot now, especially then. Still an idiot. But when you have a conversation in mid-January about whether a Kentucky basketball team will make the NCAA tournament, that's not a common thing. Now, it has happened.
Fairly rare, yeah.
It has happened a couple of times, this century where they've gone through a coaching change here or there, or, Cal had a whopper of a bad year one year. They do happen.
There's gonna be an off year occasionally,
but
for them, that's the rarity.
Yeah,
extreme rarity.
And stacking success in this era where you're, as Polinsky just said earlier, when your entire roster is new every year, like Bill Self's one of the best to ever do this. He's had a couple teams in recent years where you're like, are they even how is a Kansas team like that? Well, because you don't have that many guys on your roster. It's not football. You have a smaller number of guys. If one or two of those guys get hurt, or they're not quite what you thought they were, or they break up with their girlfriend and they're in the dumps for a month, you know, that hurts. It hurts a lot. And so maybe one of their parents is sick, right? Like maybe they get homesick. Maybe they're from another country and they're like, my family is like a 9-hour flight away or 10-hour flight away. And you know, that's not ideal. So these things are kind of hard to calculate, but this is a game Tennessee should win. Tennessee almost always wins at home. Now, I will tell you, you know who's coming there a couple times and beaten Tennessee? Kentucky. So, yeah, I mean, I don't have a great feeling for this game. I think Tennessee probably wins it, but I don't know if it's going to be comfortable. But congratulations ahead of time to those 500 UT students who are going to get the bomber jackets. Those things are sweet that they're giving to the first 500 students to show up tomorrow. That's worth getting up for.
Oh, yeah.
That's worth getting up with a hangover to go down there and get that. Get you some pizza, get you that sweet bomber jacket. That looks pretty nice. It's one of the better student giveaways I've seen. So we'll see how that game goes. We'll see how the portal wraps up. By the time you see us again in 71 hours, boy, are we going to have a lot of information. We're going to have a lot to go over. And we'll see exactly what that is over the next 71 hours. So until then, be safe, have a good weekend, be safe on the roads, make good decisions, and we'll see you in 71 hours.